Official Secrets, Ken MacDonald and Immanuel Kant by Vinnie Noble. The moral decisions dilemmas that Ken MacDonald faces throughout Official Secrets. So, as director of public prosecutions, Ken MacDonald faces a dilemma of whether to proceed against Catherine Gunn, who made a moral decision to leak classified information about the U.S. and U.K.'s plan to manipulate the UN into supporting the illegal Iraq War. The moral Cation and perspective on Ken MacDonald's moral dilemma. So, the categorical imperative is a moral principle that commands actions as good in themselves and regardless of consequences, and dictates that we should only act according to maxims that we could will to be universal laws. So, this means that Catherine leaked this for the good of the rest of her community, and Kant would argue that laws should serve for justice and not blind obedience. And if a law leads to moral injustice when applied universally, it should not be followed. Kant would argue that laws exist to serve justice and not the other way around. And since Gunn's leak exposed government wrongdoing, punishing her would uphold unjust system. Cation advice on McDonald's moral dilemma. So even if dropping the case had or political consequences, McDonald will be obligated to act justly and drop it because deep down he knows that it is an illegal war that he's trying to proceed with. If McDonald prosecuted Gunn, he would be supporting a rule that punishes truth tellers, which could harm society if universally applied. Protecting Gunn would mean using her as a means to maintain government power rather than respecting her moral decision. And you must respect all human beings as ends in themselves, never as mere means. If you prosecute Gunn, then you reduce her as a tool of the state rather than honoring her as a moral agent who acted from duty to truth, and to respect her dignity that she acted from moral courage and not criminal intent.
Moral dilemmas that Catherine Gunn faces throughout Official Secrets. Throughout the movie Official Secrets, detailing the actual events of that whistleblower Catherine Gunn went through, Catherine Gunn faces the dilemma of whether she, a member of the British Intelligence Service, GCHQ, and a citizen of England, should leak a confidential memo from the NSA ordering intelligence members to conduct espionage on UN council members to coerce a positive verdict that would give the go-ahead for a joint invasion of Iraq. The Kantian perspective on Catherine Gunn's moral dilemma. I, as Immanuel Kant, would advise Catherine to keep three important moral rules of thumb when deciding whether to leak the confidential NSA documents or not. Firstly, I would advise that Catherine keep in mind the moral law. Adherence to laws and duties is imperative to us. As long as our duties, laws, and responsibilities adhere to the moral law, it is imperative that we follow them. Secondly, I would advise that Catherine keep in mind the idea of universal law. If we make a decision or action based on a personal maxim, said action or decision would only be moral if the personal maxim were to become a universal law, and that universal law is something that everyone would reasonably follow and understand. Finally, I would urge Catherine to make sure that her actions are based on the principles of using humanity as an end. We must always treat others as an end rather than a means, and Catherine should consider if her actions could cause foreseeable harm to others, or if her actions are done with genuine concern for others. My Kantian advice to Catherine Gunn's moral dilemma. It is important that when we make a moral decision, we adhere to moral law. Catherine leaking the memo is a deliberate act of violating the Official Secrets Act, a lawfully imposed duty that Catherine chose to participate in when she joined GCHQ. As much as it is a violation of moral law, I would not recommend that Catherine Gunn leak the document. Secondly, when making moral decisions, we should consider if it would be reasonable to universalize our maxims that influence the decision. Catherine leaking the memo under the justification that government secrets should be exposed if they could cause harm would be harmful if universalized, as it would undermine the contract we enter with a government and would nullify the concept of confidentiality as a whole. As such, I would not recommend that Catherine leak the documents.
Hello, my name is Blake Sweetman, and I will be speaking as Immanuel Kant, giving ethical advice to Ben Emerson, the lawyer in Official Secrets. Ben Emerson must decide whether to defend Catherine Gunn, who leaked a secret government memo to expose illegal war actions during the war. This puts him against the British government, raising a tough ethical question. Should he defend someone who broke the law to tell the truth? And yes, he should. Morality is about duty, not consequences. If defending the truth is the right thing to do, then it must be done, no matter the risks. This is because we must follow universal moral laws. If I said he didn't have to defend her, then I would be saying that everyone should not stand up for justice when the truth is at risk, which would lead to a world where corruption goes unchallenged. If all lawyers refused to stand up for truth, justice would collapse. Therefore, Ben must defend Catherine Gunn because defending the truth is a moral duty. Several of my ideas in Kantian ethics connect to Ben Emerson's choices in Official Secrets. One is the categorical imperative, which means that people should follow rules that could be fair for everyone. Emerson knows the government wants to punish Gunn for exposing the truth, but he believes the law should protect everyone equally. If the government can silence whistleblowers, it sets a dangerous example. By defending Gunn, he stands up for fairness. I also taught that duty matters more than the consequences. Emerson could tell Gunn to plead guilty to avoid punishment, but that would mean accepting an unfair system. Instead, he fights for her because it's the right thing to do, even if it's difficult. This follows my idea that people should act based on morals, not fear or personal gain. The war is illegal. The public is being lied to. This statement highlights the ethical duty to expose deception. If governments can lie without consequence, trust in leadership and justice collapses. My ethics demand that truth and integrity be upheld, regardless of personal or political risks. Respect for human dignity. Everybody should be treated as an individual, not used for someone else's goals. The government wants to punish Gunn instead of admitting its mistakes. Emerson makes sure she gets a fair defense, proving that justice should be about truth, not politics. What she did was an act of conscience. It was an act of principles. It was an act of principle in the face of great personal risk. Ben recognized that Catherine acted morally. Kant would say that defending her is a duty, not a choice, because justice must protect those who act on principle.
Okay. So here is Immanuel Kant's as me and his views on Martin Bright's moral dilemmas by me, John Castle. So Martin Bright, the journalist in Official Secrets, faces a tough decision between doing his job to report the truth and dealing with the consequences of revealing classified information. On one hand, Bright knows that exposing the truth about the government's illegal actions before the Iraq War is important for the public to know. On the other hand, he worries about hurting his career, damaging national security, putting Catherine Gunn, the whistleblower, at a risk if he exposes a secret. Bright has to decide if telling the truth is worth harm. It could cause issue. But I would see this as a dilemma where Bright has to choose between doing his moral duty or worrying about the negative consequences of his actions. So the quote is, act only according to that maxim whereby you can stand at the same time will that it be should become a universal law. So this quote emphasizes the importance of universal moral principles. Bright faces a dilemma about whether he should act in a way that can be universally justified, like exposing the truth even at personal cost. So I would tell Martin Bright to do what is morally right, no matter the consequences. I would likely advise Bright to reveal the truth because it is the right thing to do, even if it might hurt his career or make things harder for others. I would say that Bright shouldn't hold back from telling the truth just because he's afraid of the risks. Bright's job as a journalist is to tell the truth, and by doing so, he'd be acting out of duty, not fear. I would argue that telling the truth is more important than worrying about what might happen to Bright personally. Even if it causes trouble, it's still the right choice to make. And so the quote is, duty is a necessity of an action done out of the respect of a law. And I would advise Bright to follow his duty to report the truth regardless of potential consequences. He should act because it is morally required, not because of any personal benefit. So my categorical imperative is very important in Martin Bright's situation. I believe that you should only act in ways that would be okay if everyone did the same thing. In Bright's case, I would tell him the truth because that's what he would want any journalist to do, or that's what I would want any journalist to do if they were in his shoes. I also taught that you should do things because it's your duty, not because what might happen afterward. Bright should report the truth, not because it might bring him rewards or fame, but because it's the right thing to do. Another important idea for me is human dignity, treating people as important, not as tools to get something else. By revealing the truth, Bright would be respecting Gunn's actions and making sure she is not ignored or punished just to protect the government. I would tell him that to do what's right, no matter the consequences. And so the quote is, so act, you treat humanity, whether your own person or in the person of another, always at the same time as an end and never merely as a means. So Kant's principle, respecting human dignity, applies here. Bright should reveal the truth, not just to serve his own interests, but to ensure that Gunn is treated fairly and to not be used as a tool for political cover-ups.